So it's been a little bit over a month since I've been at Peking University and taking classes and everything. So since I did a first week at Peking University thoughts, I thought I would do a first month at Peking University thoughts as well. And this is again going to be a very unfiltered, just my honest thoughts of everything that's been going on, because it's definitely been a lot to handle, and I'm very tired, if I'm going to be completely honest, and I don't really know exactly what I'm going to share in this video, but I just kind of want to document my feelings and my thought processes. And I would say that a lot has gone through my head in these past couple of weeks, and it's just been really tiring, and I feel like I'm just constantly stressed and tired. And obviously there are amazing parts about the campus as well, and being at Peking University, I met so many new friends at Beta, and the community is amazing. But I think just after that first week of classes and then going forward, it's been really hard to adjust to learning in a completely different language. And I mean, my Mandarin is not horrible, but it's definitely not at the point where I can take college classes. And I think the class that really helped me understand this the most was probably chemistry. And chemistry, there's like a lot of application, but I think the part that really like hit me was like with all the chemicals and the chemical equations, and just about my basic foundation in chemistry is not very good, which you guys probably know if you watched my previous videos. Oh, and also I should probably preface, if you guys are new here, I'm a undergrad at Peking University, a freshman. I'm originally from the US, and I'm here for my undergrad degree in China, in Beijing, China, and I'm currently on the economics track, a part of the UMPeg college. So with that, before that introduction, you might have been really confused if you haven't watched any of my other videos, so sorry for that late clarification. But anyways, back to what I was saying. So for chemistry, it's just like for even the basic chemicals like nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, like all of those, like I had no idea what they were in Chinese before stepping into that class. And I think that was probably an issue on my end for not preparing well enough in advance, but I think it just really was difficult to start to get that, on top of the fact that I don't understand the basic comments of like the basic concepts of like molar conversions and how to find the concentration of a compound given the volume and the number of moles and whatever. Like even the most basic things, like I did not know how to do. And obviously it's been getting better like now that I've been like a couple weeks into class, but those first like week or two, even now, it's just been really hard. Because like I feel like everyone besides me gets what they're doing and knows what they're doing, and I'm just like over here confused and feeling really stupid because it's just kind of like, yeah. And then I think another thing was like Chem with Lab. Chem with Lab is also very difficult because Chem with Lab, like labs within themselves, you really need to pay attention to detail. You really need to read the instructions again and again and again to understand what to do. And then when it's like not in your first language, it's like 1,000 times harder, I feel like, because, and in the lab is very fast paced. So the first lab that we did, I just felt extremely incompetent and extremely helpless almost, because like I didn't know the word for a beaker, the flask, and then like I did try to study beforehand, but I think it's just still hard because when you're actually in the lab and the teacher or the person in charge is like talking and explaining what things you need to use. Like I didn't know what distilled water was, so when she was saying that, I just kind of went with the flow. And then on top of the fact that like the whole lab, like we're learning where everything is in the lab and what everything is in the lab, and like with that language barrier, it made it so much harder. And like we did a group thing, and I just felt like I was constantly asking questions, because it was like there were two parts, one you did individually and one you did with two other people. And I swear like my lab partners probably thought that I was like an idiot or something because of how many questions I asked. And like some of the questions I asked were like very basic, I'm sure. And I mean, as you guys probably know, Peking University Beta is a very competitive and very prestigious school in China, and so these students are, most of them are like the top students in their city and their area, and so these kind of basic stupid questions probably seem ridiculous to them. And I guess that was like my fault for not maybe introducing myself as an international student, but I think because I'm not actually a part of the medical school, like everybody in that class kind of knew each other to some degree, and I was just kind of like the odd one out. And they all have like the Peking University Medical School lab coats, and the goggles were all like pay the shop. So like they had the same goggles, same lab coat, and I was wearing something different, and so you can obviously tell I'm not from med school, but nobody really was willing to kind of like, they weren't really wanting to talk to me. So like there were two people sitting next to me like in the same lab table, and I was just kind of over there, and they were talking amongst themselves, and it was kind of awkward situation overall. And just after that lab, I did not feel the greatest. I didn't like, my confidence was not there, and that was just not a fun experience. And afterwards, like when I was writing the lab, I don't know, I think it really hit my self-confidence, and afterwards I was considering just withdrawing from chem and chem with lab directly, and it was a very like rough thought process, I guess. And I had to like talk to my advisor, and I talked to some of my friends, I talked to my parents, but I guess I'm still in chem, and I'm still in chem with lab right now, so you can obviously tell what my decision was. But because if I withdraw now, like I can withdraw during midterms, and if I do that, essentially if I had done that, then I wouldn't have had to go to chem, I wouldn't have had to do the second lab going forward, and then I would just directly withdraw, and then it would just have a W on my transcript essentially. But I'm not someone who loves to give up, and I think that it's not necessarily stubbornness, but I also feel like I don't want to be influenced too much by my emotions, because as I mentioned before, after Chem with Lab, I felt very helpless, and I felt very, like, not sad, but just, like, uncomfortable, and so I think that I might have been a little bit 冲动. So 冲动 is like where I feel like being in China now, like sometimes like my English, I can't even find the vocab terms that I'm looking for. But like when you're in a situation and it's like it's very chaotic and very confusing, and sometimes it's easy to let your emotions get the best of you, and that's something that I didn't want to do. I didn't want to just withdraw from Chem with Lab and from Chem just because I felt in that moment it was extremely difficult, and I felt extremely stressed and tired. Because if you really take a step back and think of things like objectively, like obviously the first time you do Chem with Lab, the first time you do it in a different language, it's going to be extremely difficult. And just like the adjustment of college itself, like the first month, the first couple of months even, is going to be very difficult, on top of the fact for me I'm doing it in a different language. So I don't think, at least, sorry, there were relatives that came over, so I had to stop the video there, but now I'm back, and it's about the same time as I started recording it yesterday, but today has been another day, and I've just been like studying chem, math, and econ because midterms are coming up. But what I was saying was, like, the reason why I was wanting to drop Chem with Lab was because I was telling myself that I don't like chemistry, that I don't want to be a doctor anymore, because I just really don't have that drive to do experimentations and stuff. And I was telling myself that because of that, I'm not meant to be a doctor. Like I wouldn't enjoy being a doctor. But like, really, if you take a step back and look at things objectively, a lot of the times, like, you can understand that maybe in the moment you're not really able to really think things through and consider all of the factors that go into whatever decision you're going to make. So I think a large part of why I wanted to drop Chem with Lab wasn't necessarily because I didn't want to be a doctor and I felt like it was a waste of time, but it was because I felt like it was really hard, and it still is really hard, but I just didn't want to make a decision that I would regret later down the line because I was being impulsive. And so in the end, I didn't drop the class, and I'm still taking it. Midterms are coming up, and I'm just doing everything that I can to prepare. Whatever happens, happens. It's really not something that I can like strictly control. I can only do my best, and if I end up not passing, then that's fine. I'll move on with my life. There are a lot of other things that I can pursue, and maybe just whatever happens, like, I'm just trying to look at things from a more I don't really know how to describe it, but just not being too tight and not putting too much pressure on myself, because I feel like a lot of the times, like when you think about something, like in the immediate future, it might seem like extremely worrisome and extremely like the end of the world, but in reality there are just so many twists and turns in life, and I think that the best that we can really do is just do our best, and wherever life takes us, that's just the path that we're going on, and we just need to make the best of it. And I know it's easier said than done, but that's just kind of like the mindset I'm trying to warp myself into right now, because if I want to like keep a healthy mindset and a happy overall situation, that's what I need to do. But I think I guess just overall, it's definitely been very hard, and Chem with Lab has really done a number on me in terms of my self-confidence and such. But I think it's only natural that even as a regular undergrad, going into college first year is always going to be full of twists and turns and very difficult situations and times where you just want to give up. But the most important thing, I think, is to have that right mindset, because with a healthy mindset you can go really far in life, and it's not always easy to maintain that kind of healthy, positive mindset. And negativity is not necessarily a bad thing. I don't think. Sometimes it's bound to happen. Like, you can't always constantly be happy, because that's never really sustainable, right? I just think that if you are having a hard time and if you are feeling negative, sad emotions, to just kind of like accept it. I don't want to start like preaching and go into like some self-therapy talk, but I just think that there are going to be all different types of like emotions that come and go, and I think the best we can do is just to accept them for what they are and keep going, rather than being held back and letting our emotions get the best of us. And that's just something that I think is something you start to learn a little bit more as you grow older and have more experiences. You start to understand how to kind of handle your emotions in a very like collective manner, and also simultaneously make sure you're not suppressing your emotions when things get hard, because if you suppress it too much, then that can also be very detrimental in the long run. But I think I'm going on a tangent. Back to school, I would say that now that I'm like a month in, I think it's definitely getting slightly better. Like I'm getting like that very subtle feeling of, oh, I'm starting to get this. Like even for chem, like it takes a lot more time for me to understand everything. But right now, at least for most of the things, I think once I spend that time to really review it, it kind of clicks to some degree. But I'm just very nervous about midterms, because it's going to be a whole different ballgame when you're actually in that kind of test setting. And I think that it's going to be really hard with like all those applications, because chemistry, math, they're all very application based, and I'm honestly not super good at kind of using application theories. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore, but I think it's just a skill that you need to build up, and that's what I'm trying to do in the moment. But there were some people that were asking me the name of the chemistry textbook that we have, so I guess I'll just show you guys again. It's General Chemistry 普通化学, that's literally the name. There's not really anything else, but it's printed by Peking University, 北大大学出版社. So I think this is like the textbook produced by Peking University specifically, and it's all in Mandarin, as you can probably imagine. But I've also started kind of like looking for online resources in English, so I can look at the online PDF in English and kind of understand. Well, okay, this is not like this version of the book, but it's a chemistry textbook in English, and I'm using that to first kind of grasp the concept before going into the Chinese textbook and kind of understanding what it's saying. So that way I think it's a strategy that helps me a little bit better, and it's helped so far, I would say, overall. And another thing is just like my iPad has definitely saved me a lot, because before I had like a bunch of different notebooks, and now all of my notes are on my iPad. So if anybody is watching this and considering getting an iPad for note taking, I definitely would suggest it, or is it just some kind of tablet, because I think having everything in one like location, like online, is a lot easier than having to keep track of different notebooks and stuff. But that's just personally what I have found to be helpful. And I guess aside from studying, in terms of school life, in case anyone is wondering, I would say that that part has been really enjoyable. I've joined a lot of different student orgs, or 社团 in Chinese is what it's called, student organizations, and there's like this international communications, bridging communication between international students and mainland students, and that's been really fun, as well as like a Sino-US exchange club, as well as I also work at the international divisions where I help with kind of like the administrative tasks of international students for undergrads, masters and stuff that are coming in and applying, which is actually like the division that I contacted when I was having trouble during my application situation and cycle. So it's been really nice to kind of have like that inside look of the international student division at Peking University. And I'm also part of the broadcast club, but there hasn't been too much going on there yet, but we're probably going to do a couple of a couple of episodes planned in the future, and I'm super excited to kind of get involved in that. And I guess another thing is that I'm also in the hockey club. I guess I'm just kind of like ranting about everything that I've been involved in so far, but the hockey club has been super, super fun, and I've honestly like enjoyed that club the most overall, just because hockey has always been a part of my life since I was like 10 when I started playing, and so it's just been really nice to get back on the ice, and it's kind of like a way of relaxing, I would say, to relieve some of the stress that all of the studying has brought. And one final thing I will say is that last week today actually, I went and participated in a speech competition, like an extemporaneous speech competition, where it was like there are random PPTs that students put together, and then each presenter goes up and then they click the thing, and there's 3 slides for them that they click through and just give random presentations on. And that was really, really scary for me because it was in Chinese, but after I did it, I felt like this kind of adrenaline pumping through me. I felt good because it actually wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be, and I didn't make a complete fool of myself, I don't think. So overall, it was kind of a eye-opening experience, almost, just kind of realizing that things like when you're thinking about doing something, it might seem extremely scary before you actually do it, but once you actually do it, then you'll realize that it's actually not as bad as you thought it was going to be. Of course, this doesn't apply for everything, but I think it's once again just that kind of mindset that really can take you far. And that's essentially what's been happening this past month. And I know that I've been talking for a long time, and not all of this information is the most interesting, but I just thought it's a way for me to kind of like process everything that's been happening for me in this past month, as well as to share what's been happening with everyone that might be interested. And I'll have more vlogs and videos in the future, so if you enjoyed this, please like, and for more content, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.